Good evening. This is the Leafs Convo. I'm Norm, along with Mike. The presentation always brought to you by our friends at Oak Ridge Ford. Lots of 2023 F-150 Lariats on the ground right now. I have the best lease deal in Canada. If you're watching in Ontario and you're looking for a truck, nobody can beat me. Mr. Augello, what is that a shirt of? The New York Yankees? I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
like half game ahead of the Jays. Two anemic teams who should be a lot better. But let's forget about the baseball for now. You punched your ticket to Nashville, hopping on an early flight down south tomorrow for the entry draft going Wednesday and into Thursday. You've got to be pretty excited.
Well, and good evening, Norm. I'm excited for hot chicken. I'm excited for barbecue. I'm excited for Tootsies and all the things on Broadway and and the NHL draft and whatever is going to happen because the way the landscape is playing out, and you saw it today with the Taylor Hall deal. Um, Taylor Hall was traded to Chicago along with the rights to Nick Foligno for basically a
Wow.
couple minor leaguers, and Boston's moving around pieces on their on checkerboard to be able to re-sign Tyler Bertuzzi. So they're clearing out money like Nashville cleared out 2 million or 2 years of Ryan Johansson. Um, Everybody's moving things around,
Mhm.
so we can expect something to happen with the Leafs. At the minimum, maybe a deal trading Matt Murray or Matt Murray being bought out this week. I think that's one or the other. That's something that's going to happen, and a number of other things are in the hopper. So it's going to be a busy week in Nashville, and like I said, I'm looking forward to it.
This is the Combo Norm, along with Mike. Thanks to Oak Ridge Ford for all of their support with this project. Brad Treliving's got his work cut out for him, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's really, I mean, he was thrown sort of right into the frying pan and into the fire,
Yep.
with which is one of the reasons why the Kyle Dubas situation and the way it played out was not the perfect scenario for the Leafs. You really, I mean, they're lucky in the respect that a general manager who is a capable one and somebody who was in the league literally a month ago could jump right in, has all the contacts in the league, but now it's evaluating this team, evaluating where to go, who to re-sign, who to say goodbye to, and what moves they're going to make. And I mean, the first moves that will need to be made before Saturday, before July 1st, will be some of the pending free agents and whether to re-sign and if they can re-sign them. Thankfully, Treliving has started off on the right step. He has told Justin Hall goodbye. He has apparently told Alex Kerfoot goodbye. And, for all the criticism of Kerfoot, he was a good Leaf. He just maybe was overpaid a little bit. But there are certain players that, the Eric Gustafson, see you later. There are players that they're definitely not not going to bring back and not even going to try to bring back, apparently. But they are focused on
Sorry, what about Ryan O'Reilly?
they're focused on three, apparently, and according to Elliot Friedman, who reported this morning, they're talking to Shen, they're talking to Achari, they're talking to O'Reilly. Those are the right three.
Right.
Now, the problem is the Leafs, they want Shen, at around what he was being paid the last few years,
Yeah.
but this might be his last contract, and he's looking to get as much money as possible and some trade
Right.
protection. And the way Friedman couched, he says there are other teams out there that are interested. There are other teams that could make offers that are better than the Leafs. And then he's got to decide whether he wants to be in Toronto or he wants to go for the extra couple $100,000 a year. I mean, I hope based on the way he played that he is back. But there's no guarantee. Achari,
Mike, let me
sorry,
just let me just interject about Shen. Sure, he'd like to make some money, but he's a millionaire. And what kind of extra money is he going to make besides the $900,000? 2 million? I mean, pay him that money if you're a lunatic general manager, but he's got a place in Toronto. Forget about the heritage aspect of it, being drafted in Toronto, being kind of exiled and then returning to reclaim some glory. He's got a place. There's something he can do on a team that can do things, right? That's got to weigh into this thought process. And yeah, he'd like to make a few extra bucks, but like, come on, you're going to go to a bottom feeder for another three, four, five, $600,000 per year. Come on, like go and
Well,
try to win a title with a team like the Maple Leafs at a few $100,000 more than you're making last year. Let's wrap this thing up and get focused.
well, I mean, obviously I'm not privy to the, what he's being offered, but, I think he made 850 or
Right.
$900,000 2-year deal last year. He might be getting offered 2 million. It's very possible that some team now, if it's a team that has a role for him, I mean, like I said, that's not sneezing money. That's significant. Now, if the Leafs, I'll say this. I mean, you see Connor Timmins at 1.1. You see Liljegren at 1.4. It was the same as Sandin. If the Leafs offered him around there, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, then I think it gets done. Maybe right now they're offering him $1 million. I don't know what they're, but like I said, he provides something to this team that has very little of. And we do know Treliving, based on his penchant with Calgary, he likes physical, big defensemen. And some of the part of that, it was Daryl Sutter, but I think they were like that before that. So I think there's a good chance that Shen comes back.
Okay.
There's no
And
guarantee.
he's 15th on the depth chart. You wonder what's at this point trying to leverage the momentum he has coming to Toronto, the inflated sense of these players, his representation has to be using that to their advantage to make some more money. At the end of the day, it'll come down to his decision, especially at this point in his career. I hope he returns. Noel Acciari brings the sandpaper, brings it every night. The Leafs can't go back to a softer style of play, and Noel Acciari at least stabilizes where they were and pushes them forward. And then obviously Ryan O'Reilly, a guy that we figured would return, but with Kyle Dubas's departure and potentially the kind of money he may make outside of what the Leafs are willing to spend, would suck if he does not return. A couple comments on those guys, and I know that the OGs and converts in the chat have some commentary too. I want to incorporate them, and then you can give us a couple extra thoughts, and we'll get out of here. Short show today, guys.
With Acciari, he made $1.25 million last year, coming off a 3-year deal with Florida. He played really well. I think he fits in with this team. Whether he fits in as a center, I mean, if they don't re-sign David Kampf, Acciari could be their third line center. I think it's a question of term again, and I think the money is going to be around the same, probably like around 1.5 million. But if he gets out into free agency and he's the type of player that we saw that he is, somebody might pay him a little more. I mean, a team like Anaheim that's looking for physicality and somebody to stick up for some of their young players, they might be willing to pay him a lot more. And if he gets $2.5 million from somebody, that he's going to take it. It's just the reality. But I think he's got a role with the Leafs, and I think there's a decent chance that he will come back. It seemed like he wanted to come back at locker cleanout. Now, the O'Reilly thing is the interesting thing, and that sort of bleeds into the Matthews and the Nylander stuff. The reports are that O'Reilly wants to stay and the Leafs want him to stay. And so that's point A. That's that they're on the same page there.
Right.
We saw the deal that Jordan Staal signed in Carolina, a 4-year deal with an AAV under 3. Now, I think O'Reilly's going to get more than that, but the blueprint of that deal, where it's longer term, 4 years, and he's 35 or 36 years old, it's longer term, but it spreads out the AAV longer, and there's no guarantee at the end of that contract he might retire after 3 years. Now, O'Reilly, I think he might trade term and it's front loaded or the AAV. Now, that's just creative accounting.
Right.
They could sign him to a 4 or 5 year deal at say $4 million, and he gets most of it or a lot of it in the first 3 years. So you could see that. I think that is connected to what ends up happening with Nylander, simply because O'Reilly's the top 6 forward, and they have to have options in case they have to trade William Nylander, which is a possibility.
Okay, official Nickel City grunge. No way Nylander takes less than 10 million. Wants to be paid in the Marner realm. Alex, I think Nylander is going to either Calgary or Philadelphia. The speculation has begun, my friend Michael.
Well, okay, I'll just say this. If he is looking for 10 million, it's going to be someplace else. And he's going to be someplace else very soon. Now that is the whole thing. And the narrative here is, and I mentioned this on the previous show, Louis Gross is the agent for William Nylander, along with his dad. And we remember the negotiations going back 5 years to 2018 that they held out until the end of, I think it was the end of November, and then he finally got signed right in December. So okay. Louis Gross was also the agent for Johnny Gaudreau, and Treliving was pushed off in the sense, oh, we'll talk about it later. Oh, we'll talk about it at the end of the season.
Right.
And then Gaudreau signs with Columbus. Now, the negotiations were professional, and Gaudreau decided he wanted to go to Columbus, but he screwed Calgary in one simple reason. They didn't get anything for him. They could have traded him. They could have traded him the year before. Treliving, I'm sure, and Frank Cervalli said this today, Treliving learned from that experience, and it's not a bad thing to learn from an experience. If you know that this guy is not going to sign, or you can't pin him down to get him on a team-friendly contract, then you're abrogating your responsibility if you don't trade him. And that's what I'm saying. It's like if he says, I want to stay in Toronto. Okay, if you want to stay in Toronto, you got to take a little less.
Right.
Austin Matthews, you can be the highest paid player in the NHL, but you can't make 14 million because we have to fit everybody else in. And if William Nylander says, I want the most money I can get, that's great. That's his right. You're just going to get it someplace else.
Jim Georgiadis, the most typical Leaf thing to do is run it back. What was the point of hiring Treliving if he makes the same decisions as Dubas? That's the conundrum. Keep the familiarity, but do things that are different and that will permeate through the organization with the same goal in mind, but with a different process that begins to unfold. Mike, I think for me personally, I think they need to trade William Nylander. The question is, what kind of fucking trade can you make that makes, forget about all the Nylanderites. Most of them will continue to be Leaf fans that, they can eventually understand is a good deal for the team, for them, but for us, in the early aftermath of any kind of transaction, we can see why the deal was made beyond, contractual issues to come, but to strengthen the team by, supplanting, one superstar player with another or potentially several.
Well, just to respond to Jim's question that you'd put up, the thing is, they didn't fire Dubas and hire Treliving to make the same decisions. Dubas was let go because he wanted more power. You don't know whether if he had that more power, he would have kept the core four or not kept the core four. The impression that I got at Locker Cleanout was that he was not closing the options to anything. So now, okay, Hurt Locker 66 says trade Nylander to Calgary. He's talking about all these players that Calgary has in the final years of their contracts: Elias Lindholm, Noah Hannafin, Backlund. There's Tyler Toffoli. Okay, yeah. So all of them want out of Calgary, apparently. The reason they want out of Calgary is because Calgary is going to trade him because Calgary can't re-sign him. None of them want to stay there. Okay, you think William Nylander wants to go to Calgary and will sign a long-term deal? If he does, then it's possible. But the problem is, I doubt it. Exactly. Yeah. It's like there's a mass exodus from Calgary. There's a mass exodus.
But also too, just fundamentally, what kind kind of creativity can we laud Brad Treliving for if all he does is migrate his old people to to Toronto? Again, you like to have your intelligentsia with you, your brass, but just all your other, like, you've got to have a scope of the league. You've got to understand what's going on around the league. Come here for a fresh start for the organization and for yourself professionally.
Well, we don't know what the makeup of this organization is going to be. We'll find out probably starting next week because a lot of contracts expire at the end of June. Treliving is going to bring. He already brought in Shane Doan, but he's going to bring in probably his own assistant general managers, a couple of them. We know that some of the people in the Leaf organization are going to be leaving for Pittsburgh. So there's going to be that change. It's going to happen. It's bound to happen. And I mean, we'll see what type of organization Treliving puts together. But the here and the now is the Matthews deal, which they can't be signed until after July 1st, and the negotiations with Nylander. And both Friedman and Frank Cervalli said the same thing about Nylander. Things will get very interesting after July 1st if there isn't a deal done. If there is if there is negotiation and they can get a deal done, there's a very distinct possibility they sign Nylander for 8 years for the similar type deal that Philip Forsberg was signed to in Nashville, which is $8.5 million times 8. Or Timo Meier, apparently the deal in New Jersey is 8.5 by 8. If it's that, I mean, my opinion, I don't want them to re-sign Nylander. I think there needs to be a paradigm shift in the core of this group, this team, the core group of this team. But if it's at $8.5 million and the cap is going up, then that's a deal that they can live with. And I in a perfect world, they want to keep the core four together because they think that they're talented and they think that eventually that they'll win. I don't particularly believe that, but they're the ones that earn the money making the decisions. I just say William Nylander is not going to take less to stay in Toronto. I would be shocked that he does. And if his agents have made it, well, we'll talk about this during the year. No. We're going to talk about it now, and we're going to get an answer now. And if you don't give us an answer, we're going to trade your ass. And
let me ask you this. Do you think William can ace a staff?
Say that again, sir.
I'm using a baseball analogy here. Do you think William Nylander can be the ace of a staff?
No.
Can he go somewhere at 10 plus and be the guy?
No, he is, and they're different type players, but he is what Phil Kessel was. He is a high-end complementary player. Very good. Probably, could be, Phil Kessel could be a Hall of Famer with the consecutive game streak and 3 Stanley Cups, but he was never a core player. He's never the type of player that could be a core player. Mm-hmm. He was a high-end, top-line winger, complementary player. That is what Nylander is. He may score 50 goals someplace else. He'll get that kind of ice time, but no, he's not. I mean, he's a core member of this team, but I don't think he is a franchise cornerstone, and he never will be.
Official Nickel City grunge. 3-way deal. Nylander somewhere. Carlson Leafs at 7 to 8 million. Prospect and picks from both teams to San Jose. But Mike, for as far-fetched as these deals appear to be, to as potentially likely or not so far-fetched, this is the time for people to let us have it, to share with the world their insane deals and drummed up scenarios and concocted potential opportunities. This is fun because we're leading into a draft and then free agency to follow. I think most of us are over the second round series loss to Florida, and let people dream and imagine all they want. For me, Mike, when this team hits prospect camp and then into the training camp that will take place September, October, what I would like to see is a team that is different than the one that shook hands with the Florida Panthers a month and a bit ago. Well, I want to see difference, and if it's dramatic, but it's a reworking that the management believes, and at least a lot of the fan base can hope will be better, then let's see it. Please don't bring this entire crew back and say we're going to try it another time.
I think it's going to be different simply because they have 10 unrestricted free agents. So that's almost half the roster. Now, I think they'll bring back 2 or 3 of them,
Right.
but I think simply by, just transition, that's going to be the case. I mean, Matt Murray's probably going to be gone. The defensemen, guys like Gustafson are going to be gone. We don't know about Shen. And a number of the fours. And I think Zach Aston Reese is going to be back, and obviously Hall is not going to be back, and Kerfoot. So there's going to be change like that. And I do think, and this is a reality, that some Marley players are finally going to get an opportunity. You're going to see Bobby McMahon get a chance. You're going to see maybe Alex Steves, or I think Pontus Holmberg is probably going to be their number 4 center. So you're going to see 2 or 3 Marlies. You hope that Nick Robertson can come back from injury. People don't even talk about him anymore, but he's still, if he could stay healthy, he's a very good complementary, again, good winger, good scoring play. He just has to stay healthy. And obviously Matthew Nyes is going to be a factor. But so there's going to be promotion from inside. There's going to be different free agents brought in. There's going to be trades. I think more than likely you're going to see a team that is about half different from what was there last year.
Right.
Last year will be better. Who knows?
OG's Converts, thanks for being here. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. We're doing our best to provide you with content once a week. It's a little bit difficult right now, especially for me. I've got so much going on with the family and work, but in the end, we'll have put together a nice collection of podcasts and videos and content, and then we'll be back on track when things really heat up. And who knows when they're going to heat up over the next couple of days, Mike. I mean, you're headed to Nashville, and then we have free agency. Could be a Nylander trade, the big signing with Matthews. A lot of other dominoes may fall in the interim, and if it warrants it, we will produce some content for you. The other thing too, Mike, is if Treliving comes in and starts moving on a lot of the guys that Dubas, not only acquired but championed, then he's right away putting his stamp on this team, and in some cases because he may just not like the guy, but in others, there are financial implications. What else do you have on your mind, Mike? Let's wrap it up.
Well, to that point, I mean, these teams are, a Treliving team is stylistically different from a Dubas team.
Right.
They have their own individual visions. I do think, and I talked about this and written about this at Hockey Buzz a number of times, is you look at Treliving and the defense that he put together. He traded for Noah Hannafin. He signed Nikita Zadorov, a big Russian. He brought in Erica Branson. He brought in Chris Tanev. There was an edge, and that is something that has been missing. And I think you see with all these teams that had success in the playoffs, their defense had, especially Vegas,
Right.
to a lesser extent Florida, they all had defenses that had an edge. And I think that's something that, the Leafs, this is not a great free agent class. And I think a lot of teams are making trades because they recognize that. They don't want to overpay guys like Radko Gudas. They don't want to overpay guys like Scott Mayfield. But some of those guys would be perfect fits for what the Leafs are looking for. It's just, I don't know if they want to spend $4.5 million on Radko Gudas.
Mm-hmm. Look, 2018, they punctuated they punctuated a plan to build this team from the center line out. If your emphasis is going to switch to defense, which should have always been part of the emphasis, we all know that defense and goaltending wins hockey the same way pitching and defense wins in baseball. It's a known thing, right? There is no way you can do it by retaining Nylander, Matthews. Tavares is going to re-sign, and you can't trade the albatross contract that Marner has, in some people's opinion. You just can't. You have to take a leap of faith, do something that may seem dramatic to many people, and move someone, maybe move 2 and get after it. And the thing about it, Mike, is I told you I'd like to see this team look different when it takes the ice in the next chapter of the saga. There's got to be some potential there that this team, when it statistically, regresses a little bit, and nobody wants to hear that kind of thing. It'd be interesting to see how you catapult what's taken place and some of the turmoil that's gone on over the last little while into something that is just way better than what we've been able to witness. That's the thing, and it's in Brad Treliving's hands, and we're all going to be here for it. Last word to you.
Not that anybody would sign up for a team, falling 15 points in the standings and making the playoffs on the last day of the regular season, but a team like that, the Florida Panthers, almost won the Stanley Cup. So if you look at the Leafs, and they're more built for the playoffs rather than the regular season, and they sacrifice points in that respect, but then they have success in the playoffs. And there's no guarantees, unfortunately. Right. But I think that everybody recognizes that this hasn't worked. They're extremely talented. They're extremely fun to watch, but nobody gives a damn unless they win when it counts. And this team, I think, with this core group has proved, not because they're shirking, not because they're not talented, but it just doesn't work. You have to have different type players and a diversification of players to have success in the playoffs. And this team hasn't had it the last 6 or 7 years, and they need to change. But whether they can or not, we'll see.
It remains to be seen, but the moments where change can be enacted and the results can be dissected are just about to take place. Mike, safe travels to Nashville. Have a blast at the draft. I know you've covered other drafts before. I've been to many of them. They are a good time, and let's hope that when the draft is over, that the Leafs have positioned themselves in a better way than they are right now. Not to say the world is falling apart, or the sky is falling on this team right now, but I think collectively, OGs and converts, we can all agree what has taken place has been great, but it just hasn't been great enough. Because the result of great, when you're a team worth its weight like the Toronto Maple Leafs, is a Stanley Cup. Okay, Mike, safe travels to Nashville. We'll catch you in a few days. All right, OGs, converts, like the content, subscribe to the channel. We are out.